Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in today's video, we are going to be covering some very impactful news related to Blizzard Entertainment that any true gamer is going to want to know about. Now, we're going to need a little bit of context added to the situation that is going on here. Now, earlier this year, and it's been ongoing for some time, that there have been massive layoffs in tech as well as gaming, not to mention the stock market crash. And it seems, though, that AAA game studios are starting to adapt to that with this major announcement that Blizzard Entertainment has just made. And I think it goes without saying that games are starting to trend in a completely different direction than before. And this trend that has been noticed is what I'm going to refer to as the boom and then bust meta. This is basically a game that comes out, it explodes with popularity initially for a few weeks to up to a few months, and afterwards fizzles out into nothing and busts at that point. And some of these games, it's self-inflicted. Some of these games, I think, due to the fact that they're a premium price, likely have an older player base, and for those players, they don't really have a lot of time like they used to be able to take off more than a couple of weeks to enjoy the release of a game and then continue forward. And then not to mention that there are just more games than ever with really crazy FOMO marketing that are constantly bombarding you to try them next. So you've got a huge culmination of events coming together that I think are creating this boom and bust meta. And I think it's great now that AAA game companies like Blizzard Entertainment are actually adapting to this. So this adaptation is that they are going to be forming a small team of former King employees, and this team is going to be developing fan services to already existing IPs in a way faster format than we've seen previously. One of the biggest downsides of these AAA game companies is speed and red tape and bureaucracy. It just takes forever to get something going. It takes so much pre-approval. It takes so much proof of concept in order to justify the massive cost that a lot of these big IPs have. And it seems like this smaller team is an adaptation by Microsoft, which has now acquired Blizzard Entertainment in order to produce content more frequently. I mean, the history of Blizzard Entertainment is sometimes they can take a decade to 20 years before they release out another game. But those games were always fantastic. So it is my hope that basically we're going to have two things going on at once. We're going to have the old school Blizzard style of development, which is just really pouring in a lot to make sure that it's an epic product when it comes out, when it's ready to come out of the oven. And now we're going to have this smaller team that's going to be focusing on what is being called AA titles at the moment, which I think is very similar to Riot Forge, where they've been producing smaller scale games. And not to mention that Blizzard has already kind of been showing their hand moving towards things like Plunderstorm and Mop Remix recently with World of Warcraft. But I'm kind of hoping that these games coming out from this AA team are going to be entirely separate. I think one of the things that potentially hamstrung Plunderstorm's success was the fact that it was tied directly into World of Warcraft, requiring the subscription in order to play. And I think that potentially actually limited it on its ability to grow and expand and the potential to see from it. But if you were somebody obviously that didn't like Battle Royales, you may not have liked Plunderstorm. And I think the fact that it was attached to WoW so directly is what led to such a public outcry of criticisms towards it. Whereas if it had been separate, then I think this criticism would have been almost otherwise completely silenced out, because he would have had no reason to really be upset about participating in Plunderstorm at that point. But I kind of understand why they did it as well. It's a risk, and that's the thing with these AAA game companies is they want to reduce risk and they want to reduce costs. They don't want to be pumping in all the money into something that they're not 100% sure if it's going to work. We've already seen that with them cutting Titan previously, which then turned into Overwatch. They recently cut out their survival game, which now potentially they could be using those assets of that survival game to build off something that might be of smaller scale, like maybe a StarCraft survival game. I mean, imagine being like on a planet with Zerg and trying to navigate your way around and survive. Imagine like a Helldivers style of game with the StarCraft IP. I really feel like there's limitless potential for this team, and I am very excited to see what actually comes out from them. This is honestly like one of the biggest things I've been excited for from Blizzard for some time at this point, because I think that there's so much creative potential left untapped that is now finally going to be tapped and serviced towards fans. I am absolutely blown away by this and really excited to see this AAA game studio adapt and realize the weaknesses that it had inherently with speed and actually change rather than crush and crumble, like we have seen a lot of companies in positions like this do when they are unable to adapt. The next big update that we've got is in regards to the pre-release for The War Within, which, has garnered at least some criticism due to the fact that if players have early access, how much of an advantage are they going to really have over players that can't afford or don't really want to participate in the early access? Blizzard has released a post discussing that basically they are going to be capping things. Specifically in PvP on this update, players are only going to be able to earn up to 4,000 honor, which is below the 15,000 honor that is typical at any given moment. And it should be noted that there are a lot more things that you can purchase with honor this time around. So if they had left this uncapped, you would likely be able to get pretty far ahead, and not to mention that the PvP vendors will not even have items that are purchasable, which means that this 3-day period of time, honestly, I don't think that you should view it as an opportunity to get ahead of other players, because it seems like Blizzard is making sure that that's not actually going to be the case. It should actually be a 3-day relaxing period where you actually get to enjoy the game. I know that's completely new concept, but with how it's being set up, that's how I'm viewing the best way to utilize this pre-release is that there's nothing to race to. You have 3 days to just enjoy the zones, enjoy the quests, immerse yourself in all of the new content, in all of the new story, and take your time to get to max level until after that 3-day period where everybody is just going to rat race into trying to get all the gear that they need, whether it's from PvP or dungeons or raids, and get ready and race the world first and all this stuff. And everybody's going to go back into that super like min-maxed type of playstyle, super sweat that always ends up happening with a video game release at this point. But I actually think that this pre-release, although it garnered criticism earlier, is actually potentially doing the opposite. You're paying to be able to actually enjoy the game, sit down and digest it the way that it was intended. So I really like this direction for it. It's also just a great time to make sure that you can level any characters that you want. It's going to give you 3 extra days to maybe you leveled a mage, and now you're thinking like maybe I want something else. You've got a couple of extra days in order to get those characters up and running before you've really got to get them onto the gear tracks, which I'm assuming is not going to be too bad either in this expansion, given that they seem to be really more about account wide and alts being more accessible. So there's probably not a huge amount to panic about, but it was important to talk about and cover in today's video to keep you up to date. But that is not all of the news with Blizzard Entertainment and World of Warcraft. There have been really big cinematics beginning to come out from Blizzard that are really grabbing a lot of players and fans' attention. I think most notably this fully animated couple seconds long clip, which I'm hoping is teasing something like a Netflix adaptation, something akin to Riot's Arcane. And this is me holding my expectations for this in really high regard because I have no idea what the cinematic is actually based around. This could just be a teaser into something much smaller than that, but I really, with the previous news that we already discussed, I'm kind of holding my expectations pretty high with this one, that it's going to be something really epic. And then on top of that, we are starting to get a lot more story rolling out for The War Within, which I think is really important for bringing players back into the fold, whether they're new or returning, to understand what's going on with the story. We've got the recap cinematics that came through in the pre-patch, which I think do a fantastic job of summarizing everything up to this point. And now we are starting to see some more of the current action with players like Khadgar going up against Xal'atath in Dalaran City, and it was absolutely epic. I really like this level of storytelling that's going on. I think that if they can keep on track with this, that the War Within, which is the first of the Soul Saga, which is going to be a trilogy of expansions, means that they could unfold back into the eras of Warcraft 3, where we had characters like Arthas developing into the Lich King and culminating into the expansion Wrath of the Lich King, to where we took him down. And it was that epic long path and story development that really built the core foundations and fans of the World of Warcraft IP, or Warcraft IP. And I think, a story like this is really setting the scale for that, and I am more than excited to check out what it's got for us. And finally, to cap everything off in this news update, is that there are going to be Twitch drops available for the launch of the War Within, so you can support all of your favorite content creators and work towards a mount and a pet. I have my stream linked in the description down below if you'd like to join me on my journey and initial experiences with the expansion. I am aiming to cover a huge slew of content. I want to dabble my toes more into Mythic Plus waters, and as well focus on PvP still at this point, as it's kind of my bread and butter for like the past 20 years. But I think Mythic Plus is likely going to be really fun this time around, with all of the core changes they're making to the roles between tank, healer, and DPS, and how awesome some of the dungeons look up to this point that I've been able to sneak peek on High Mythic Plus competitors' streams and catch a few snippets on YouTube here and there. It's definitely got me a lot more excited, I would say, than some of the most recent expansions in order to expand and reach out to new content. So if you'd like to enjoy earning those rewards and hang out with me, stream is linked in the description down below. Aside from that, thank you for tuning in today. As always, make sure to smash the subscribe button so you don't miss out on anything related to World of Warcraft. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one.